This episode features conversations about suicide and addiction.
Well, listen, man, I listened to this podcast, and this guy said the only way you're going to know what your breaking point is to go just past it and then to dial back.
Yeah,
you know?
you gotta find it.
Yeah, you gotta find it. Because humans don't like to be idle. Like, I think that's where a lot of anxiety comes into play, is when they have too much time on their hands. So, like, to think.
Oh, yes. You become your own worst nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
When you get in your own head.
Yep.
That's what's so nice about just getting outside, going on a trail, you detach from that. You detach from yourself, or just you can lose yourself in other things, you know?
Yeah.
My name is Andrew Bice. I spent the last 8 years riding a swell as a special warfare combatant crewman. I've had moments where I felt like I've been riding on tops of waves, and others where I feel pinned to the ocean floor under the whitewash. I've held many titles in my life: son, husband, father, operator. Join me as I venture into a whole new role, this time as a Civvy. Welcome to Civvies, a podcast by MetroStar. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Civvies. I got a very special guest who, what she's doing should be considered illegal probably in all 50 states. And I mean that in a good way, as far as double dipping with American Warrior Association, well as Climb4. So Leslie, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I kind of want to start with, before we get into those the organizations and what you do and how you help the vet community and just people all around, I kind of want to get into who you are and what led you down that path. So you started in the Navy, is that correct?
Yep, I was in the Navy. I was a damage controlman. I joined right out of high school, so I was barely 18. I went to a Catholic all-girl high school, so I was extremely sheltered. It was a college prep. Like, I have a twin brother and an older brother. They both went to an all-male Catholic high school, the same one, and I was not prepared in the least for what I was getting myself into. And I was led to the Navy because I really didn't have any other options at that point. I sucked at school and did not do well. We all played volleyball. We're a volleyball family. My older brother went to college on a full ride scholarship for volleyball and academics. And then my twin brother did as well in Denver. And
look out.
I know. And then here I am. I'm like sneaking vodka into water bottles, like in a field, passing out with my friends, like just trying to be social. And I didn't have the slightest clue that life existed outside of high school, and that I would have to, fend for myself eventually, outside of the shelter that I had from my parents. I had a really great upbringing. And when I joined, my uncle was a 27-year khaki and was a corpsman FMF. And it was really fortunate for me that he was retiring as I was in A school. So when I was in A school, they showed me the list of places I could go. They were like, Virginia. I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, of course. That's, I think, everyone's reaction. Like, no.
Absolutely not. I'll never. And then there was San Diego. There was Japan. And none of those sounded good to me. And my uncle called and he was like, I have about 3 weeks left of pool for you. And this is probably the only thing I'll be able to give you in the military. I can get you anywhere you want to go. And my super small brain was like, Hawaii.
Yeah, there's only one spot I want to go.
Just like, I couldn't imagine anything better. And he was like, Hawaii? Really? I was like, yes, I want to do Hawaii. So he actually talked to the detailer. They got me on a ship in Hawaii. And what my uncle did not know and what I did not know at the time was that the ship that he had gotten me orders on was a newly integrated ship, which means that it was an all-male ship. And the ship that I was coming into, I would be the first female engineer on the entire ship, and I would be the third total there of about 400 people. So I was introduced very, very quickly to the hardships that women face. And I honestly didn't even recognize it as a like a struggle or something that I would be introduced to, but it was, and without even really getting into the grit of it, you know, a lot of people are talking now since the Me Too movement came out. Even then, like the women were very, very quiet. Like you never heard anything from the female veteran side. But then when the Vanessa Guillen situation happened about a year after the Me Too movement, that was when the uproar happened.
Things just started coming
right. And it wasn't just like sexual assault. It was grooming. It's like all these like tiny subsets of harassment that people don't talk about. One, because they don't think it's as bad, you know? And two, they just don't want to start any issues. It's behind them. It's not an issue anymore. It is what it is. So,
talk about a juxtaposition to go from an all girls school to pretty much an all male ship. Right. You know what I mean? Like from one extreme to the other. I mean, I'm sure that was kind of eye opening. It was. Know? And then, kind of what transpired from that, I guess was kind of, maybe you weren't ready for, didn't expect, right?
Right. So when I got to this ship, we were in the middle, we just failed InServe, which is this huge thing that you have to go through in order to prepare the ship for a deployment. And so I had gotten there right when they had failed InServe. It was all over the Navy Times, like ship not fit for duty, and
you come to like everyone being like down and upset, like this is.
People are staying up late, like not leaving the ship till 2 a.m., coming back to work at 6 a.m. I had no idea what was going on, and I got to the ship, I want to say in March of 2000 or February of 2009. And then we deployed in July, and it was supposed to be a 6-month. It turned into a 9-month.
That's usually the case.
Right.
That's usually how it works.
And it was a counter-piracy operation off the coast of Somalia. So we did that. And that is where literally everything flew off the handles. Like for me, for some other girls on that ship. And when I got back from deployment, I was just an angry individual. The way that things were handled, without getting into it, the support that I received was minimal, and it was from female leadership, and there were maybe 2 at the time. And when we got back from deployment, my chief, who was a male, sat me down and was like, I don't think you're doing well anymore, and you need to get off the ship and see what's going on, talk to somebody. And
he recognized something was going on. That's good.
Which is
a lot
great.
Of times that doesn't even happen, or it's like, just, hey, get through it.
Right.
Whatever.
And I remember that guy fondly, and he could have
right, kept you in a bad spot and just kept going, which I've seen happen. That
for sure. So I was super lucky in that regard. And so they took me off the ship for about 4 months. I was at this little transient personnel unit. I was going to therapy. We talked about all of these things that had happened. They asked me if I wanted to stay in. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out. Of course I want to stay in.
When you were having these conversations, did you still have 2 years on your contract?
I did. It was a 5-year contract. So I actually had 3.5 years left. So went to the transient personnel unit, got some stuff sorted out, got put back out to the fleet, and they transferred me to San Diego. So that's how I ended up in San Diego. Met my best friend ever. Her name was Candace. And we had the best time. Like, I wish, I take that back, because my life would be completely different and I just love the way that my life turned out, truly.
Right.
But that second command was the exact opposite of what the first one was. Like, I had no idea that it could be that good. The leadership could be that good. The men on board could be that respectful. Completely different.
Is that wild to think about?
So wild. It's so wild. And when I was getting out, I was asked to stay in. My evals were amazing. Mm-hmm. They were hurting for people in that, in the DC realm. And the only two places that they would let me go if I did stay in, because I couldn't extend on my ship, was Japan and Virginia. And I was like, I will never. Again, I will never. So I got out completely ill prepared, and still very much not happy with the military. I'd held a very huge grudge that lasted way longer than it needed to last, and held me back from a lot of things that I could have been really, really successful in. But ended up getting out. I stayed friends with Candace. She got out a little bit before me because she got pregnant, ended her term, and then stayed with her fiance, who was actually in our repair shop together. So they met, on board. Yeah. Matt,
Sparks flew.
They did, and you could see it, but they were really professional. And then they ended up accidentally getting pregnant, and they had Benji, their son. Yeah. And he was just an amazing kid. And they ended up moving back to Phoenix. He got a job in contracting renovation work for houses. So they moved to Phoenix. And that was in 2013. And in 2013, that's when I got out of the military, got out with like an F you attitude. I'm getting out because I'm going to make it regardless. How bad can it be out there? And I just got mixed up with the wrong people. I started self-medicating. Alcohol went to cocaine. I would do anything I got my hands on. Yeah.
You think a part of that is trying to deal with what you experienced while you served? Right.
And I was one of those people that didn't do, like, even when they offered to do the disability stuff, I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. And so when all of these things came spiraling down, I guess, it accumulated into a DUI. So I got a DUI. I was in jail. The job that I had already written me up a couple of times because I was a terrible worker. I was
really wasn't
coming in drunk, or I was coming in tired. I wasn't paying attention. It was very blasé attitude about the whole thing. That when I got the DUI and I didn't show up for work that morning, that was like the final straw. And I knew that when I got a phone call after I got out, that I was going to be getting fired. Just like there was.
Right. That's common. No, but you knew that was.
Knew it.
Yeah,
I knew
100%.
it. And my manager at the time sat me down when I came in, and she was like, "Are you doing okay?" And I was like, "I'm fine."
Yeah. Just complete denial. I'm doing
Absolutely.
great, man. What do you mean?
Yeah. Woo.
What's the question here?
But she was like, "I think you're having a hard time, and I hate to do this. I really do hope that you get some help and figure it out."
Here's something to think about too. Obviously you were in a spot, it wasn't good as far as like who you could reach out to, who you could connect with, like maybe even Candace. Like, did you just push everything, or wasn't even on your forefront of your mind? You just push everything out? Or do you still have a little bit there just to kind of hold?
I knew I had an issue. There was no doubt about it. I definitely, when people would ask me, friends would talk to me, tell me I was a little bit different, and nobody was talking about it. Like, nobody else had issues. So who am I to have issues, right? Right. And nobody talked about it. And this was like a 3-year stint of bad mistakes. Yeah. And the DUI and getting fired was kind of like my realization, like, okay, like I'm obviously doing something wrong. Like, this isn't just fun. Yeah. Like,
in a way, are you glad that kind of happened as a wake up call?
It had to happen. And luckily I didn't hurt anybody. I think how they found out that I was drunk driving, because I was driving well. Yeah.
Or at least you think so. Yeah, right? I just killed it. Yeah,
but somebody flicked a cigarette butt out the car window, and the cops saw that and pulled us over for littering. So that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But got me out of the car. I knew right then it was going to be no good. I remember calling my mom from the jail and being like, I'm in a little bit of trouble. Told her what happened. She was like, my mom and dad are high school sweethearts. They've been together for their whole lives essentially, and have always helped me. And it was the first time I'd reached out to my parents and was like, I'm going to lose my job. I'm in jail. I don't know what to do. I need some help. And so they got me set up with a lawyer, the whole nine. They posted the bail. I got out.
Yeah.
Like, really, really helped me. And when I tried to find a job after that, it was incredibly difficult. It wasn't like the job market right now. It was very much impossible for me to get a job in that same kind of industry because I only had that one job in that industry.
Good luck using them as a reference.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm really good at it. Call them up. They'll vouch for me.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes.
No, not so much.
So I started until I was really, really heavy looking into the job market. And I realized I was living off of my credit card. I had a $10,000 max. My rent in San Diego for this tiny little shack shared with one other person and 2 bedrooms, 1 bath in Ocean Beach. I don't know if you've ever been there, but right in the middle of it off Dog Beach. Mm-hmm. And that was $1,400 a month.
Yeah. And
so on top of all of my other bills and stuff, I was just throwing it on a credit card. Mm-hmm. Like, and I think I realized I didn't really have a choice but to kind of leave San Diego and get my life together. And I'd always loved hiking.
Yeah.
I'd never done a long distance hike, but I had seen something on Instagram, I think, where somebody had hiked the PCT, and the PCT was just at the border. So 30 minutes away from the start of it.
Essentially, that starts in Mexico, ends in Canada.
Yep.
Okay.
So I just decided, I called my mom one day and I was like, I am the one that gives her the gray hair for sure. 100%. I got all the tattoos. I'm covered in tattoos. I joined the Navy. I went to jail. I'm a criminal. And so I call her and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. And she was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going to go hike the PCT. It's 2,700 miles. I'm just going to go kick rocks out there for a little bit. And I can just hear her voice, and she was like, why can't you just be normal? Like,
here goes like another crazy adventure
where she just has to be
yeah.
stressed to death over me. And so I sold all of my stuff. I sold everything except for, I only had one dog at the time, Obi, and my car. So those are the only two things I didn't sell. I sold everything else so that I could prep boxes, resupply boxes. I went home to hang out with my parents. My dad has a bunch of dehydrators. He's a hunter, so he's got all the setup for doing that. And
for resupply boxes, how do you stage those in the right place? Where are you going to go?
Right. So you
can't just get up and leave, right?
No,
there's got to be some planning here.
Unless you have a ton of money. Like you can hike into a town or hitchhike into a town once you get to an exit point, and you can just go in and buy all the stuff you need, right? But if you're like me, where you don't have like income, you kind of have to think ahead of time. So I spent from, I would say, October, maybe September of 2016 to February, March of 2017, figuring out how I could work with the money that I had from selling all of my things, which was a lot of stuff. And then not having to pay rent because I was just couch hopping with my friends until I figured it out. And I realized that the most expensive thing was the gear, right?
Yeah, and then where do you start with that too? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how much do you have to pack? What do you need?
Right.
Like weather?
And for a trip like that, you need you can't just buy like a tent off Amazon. Like you're going to be banging that stuff up, right? You're living in it. So I posted on Facebook to my friends and I was like, hey, like this is what I'm doing. This is the plan I have. I'm about to go hang out with my dad and make our own fruit roll-ups and trail mix and stuff. And I really need help. So if anybody has, some crampons they can let go of, or a sleeping pad or anything that I could just borrow, I would really appreciate it. Let me know. That post blew up. And I would say 100% of the people that donated gear to me were veterans.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've been out just for a little bit, probably, well, I say that, I'm going to say that for like 20 years. I just got out, man. But it's been about, I think 6 months, And I've already leaned on and talked to so many people in the community. You could talk about all walks of life and all different places, but it's there and it's strong. It's awesome. It's a good feeling like, hey,
oh yeah,
we'll have each other's back no matter what.
Oh yeah. Shoulder to shoulder forever. And these people knew they weren't getting that gear back. Like it was going to be completely demolished by the time I was done. Right. And so about 3 weeks after I posted that, I had an entire living room of just stuff. Even down to the boots, man, like somebody donated a pair of like size 8 men's boots that they could get rid of. And we had water filters to choose from, a ton of different sleeping bags, different gear for all of the seasons I was going to go through and all the ecosystem. So
now you have the plan. And now you have the gear.
Right.
Is there a point where like holy crap, this is going to happen?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Like reality still haven't set in yet. Cause I'm like, whatever. It can't be too crazy. Right. Like,
right.
I'll just do it.
Right. I think it really set in the first day that I was on the trail. Before I get into that, the idea for this hike kind of changed. So when I was planning this trip, and this is important for the start of Climb4, I'd been in contact with Candace, and I told her, I was like, I have to drive to Louisville to hang out with my dad and do all this stuff. And I have to drive straight through Phoenix to get to my dad. Can I stop and see you?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my God, we don't live in Phoenix anymore. We live like three hours outside of it. And I think I was actually driving through Phoenix when I finally told her, like, I'm driving through Phoenix. Like, let me say hi to Benji,
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my gosh, we're 3 hours away. If you can like take a nap or like sit at a coffee shop, I can make it to you. And I was like, oh, how about this? Like when I'm driving back to San Diego from Kentucky, I'll make it a point to like spend a couple days with you guys. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it to be just me driving through and hi, bye.
Right.
I want to sit down with you. And she said, yeah, Matt and Benji would really love that. And it was January 2nd. I was about to make the trek back to San Diego from Kentucky, and I got a phone call like 2 a.m. from Matt, her fiance, and he was like, "Are you doing all right? Like, are you in a place where you're gonna be okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's 2 a.m. Like, what's going on?" And he was like, "Candace shot herself and is dead." And I don't remember anything else about the next week. I immediately got on the road, headed back to San Diego. The first thing that I did was make sure that the command knew that we were a part of in 2013 together. Again, this is like 3 years later. A lot of people had already left, but I somehow got a hold of probably half of the command. We all met at a brewery. Everybody's handing me like just wads of money to send to Matt in Phoenix. Matt ended up showing up, which was insane.
Yeah.
And we had a great time, like got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen in a long time. And I had this giant wad of cash in my pocket. They're like, wait until everybody leaves to give it to Matt. And
right. When it's appropriate.
Right, And so the night ends, a couple people come back with me to the house where I'm staying, and we just sit up, we throw a campfire outside, and we're all chatting. And then eventually it's just me and Matt. We have a good conversation. He leaves, and then I'm about to go to sleep, putting my PJs on, and I realize this giant wad of cash is still in my pocket.
Yeah.
And I texted him and I was like, are you on the road yet? Like, I forgot to give you something. Like, we raised a ton of money at this thing. Like, I just want to give it to you. It's like some help. And he was like, actually, I got to send you some money while you've been preparing for this trip. Candace has been saving for you.
Wow.
And he was like, so keep that money and send me your Venmo or whatever it was back then. And I just like lost it. And
talk about so much.
Oh my gosh.
Going on at one point in time.
Oh yeah. Right before I was about to head out. And so then I think I had about 3 months left before we really started. It was in April, the 1st of April that we started. I just had this idea, like Benji was tiny when she died, and I decided to make this kind of like a hiking campaign for her. So I made these little like silicone bracelets. The hashtag on it had Climb4Candace on it. And I literally probably had 500 made, and I would just stash them in my backpack and put them in resupply boxes anywhere I could have extras. And I would give them to each person that I met. And I was like, if you could just like take a picture with the bracelet, hashtag that so I can find it. And I'd like to make something for Benji for when he's older, and so he can have something that's kind of hers.
Right.
And that's what kind of launched the idea for how I would honor Candace after the hike.
Right.
That's kind of how the idea came to be, is when I was out there hiking, my entire life changed. And
have you been this whole time? So once you got out of jail, once you decided, hey, I got to go on my vision quest or whatever you want to say, have you been clean this whole time? Have you been like on the straight and narrow?
Yep. I drink, but but
as far as going like off the rails, that's kind of that's to the side.
That was it. That was it. I mean, I even lost my job back during COVID. I was in federal sales. I sold firearms to the government and Department of Homeland Security. I did all of that. I loved that job. Best job ever. And they let me go during the pandemic. It was show business. And it was hard. And I'd lived a life of luxury that I was nowhere close to being able to keep, even with unemployment. So even then, even with a huge detriment to my income and my life, I still didn't resort to that. I definitely kick rocks and go disappear for a few days with some jerky, but like that's about as far as I go with people being worried about me, is like, all right, she's somewhere in the Shenandoah. You
gotta put a GPS tracker on just in case, but she's somewhere.
She's somewhere.
Well, I mean, that's such a, I don't say it's such a healthier way to, you still got to take time for yourself, just doing it in a different way,
right?
Different capacity.
Right.
So then you're on the trail, you're passing out bracelets.
Yep. I ran into a couple different guys that were on trips through nonprofits. There was a combat veteran hiking group that was out there. They applied and they go through an application process, and then they get grouped up and they do either the CDT, the Continental Divide Trail, or the AT, or the PCT, and they get grouped with these guys and they have to stay together for the entirety. And what I learned when I was out there is that your trail family, which is who you hike with day to day, changes all the time. Yeah. And
people come in and people come out.
People
it's
quit.
Like, okay.
People are, come in and do a section hike. So you're with a person for 170 miles who is just doing 170 miles. Or,
wow.
I started with 2 girls. One girl quit at about 115 miles in. And then the second girl got off the trail at mile 700, which is the start of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. And in 2017, it was literally notoriously called the year of fire and ice. There were fires everywhere. There was flooding everywhere. And it was a super, super painful hike to do that year, on top of it already being pretty painful.
Right.
So everybody, your environment changes, your people change, and you just get close to a ton of people. And I was lucky enough to meet this group, and I asked them, I was like, how do you love it? Like, what's going on with this? And he was like, I really love it, but I really don't like the fact that it's specific to combat veterans. I am a combat veteran, but I feel like, anxiety and depression can be found in anyone in the military, regardless of what their experience was with it. Right. Yeah. And I kind of took a mental note of that. And when I realized what I wanted to do, I mean, it was just the exact same thing that happened to me when I wanted to do this trip. It was like, I want to do this trip, but I have no idea how I'm going to get this gear. And it's like, let me take that financial burden away. Like, let me just bridge that gap. And they can honestly do the rest. Like, hiking is something that you do not need to be, everybody's good at it the second that they start.
Yeah.
All you're doing is walking, you know,
Just
and you've been
don't
walking
stop.
your whole life. So I was just like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. So, I mean, that's how it started. It was going to be called Climb4 Candace, and I talked to a couple advisors and different organizations, and they were like, it sounds a little bit too personal. And I was like, well, it is.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. That's the idea.
And he was like, can you change it maybe a little bit so that it can stick with a bunch of people, right? And so I changed the name to Climb, the number 4, and 4 being the 4 most important gear elements that you need to go backpacking. So a backpack, a tent, a sleeping system, and a cooking system. And if they need help with anything else, we obviously like reach out to different orgs. Like there was a guy that we outfitted that has a service dog, and he was like, is there any way that I could get some stuff for, you know, my service dog? He's going to be with me when I go hike. And we reached out to chewy.com and we were like, hey, we got this guy. Is there any way you can donate anything? They sent him a whole getup, like a dog vest, shoes, like the whole 9. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
And then for this trip, was there like any moments where, you know, because he had a lot going on, obviously, but everyone carries their own weight. Everyone has a past. Everyone has demons, just in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. Were there moments like on this trip where you're like, you have to face that a little bit? Were things starting to come out, or was it just getting lost and forgetting that? That's tough.
It is. It's tough, but it's not. It's the people that I met out there, like, you will never find a bad thru hiker. Like, you never will. Like, they just want to keep to themselves. They want to meet new people if they're in the mood for it. If you don't want to meet new people, you can just get in your tent, make yourself unavailable. But if you want to chat, there are people at
Tent's
the fire.
Close, man. Don't walk by.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I took away from the PCT, just for me, like, one of my biggest issues is that I do struggle with anxiety. And I struggle with anxiety to finish anything. Mm-hmm. Like I went to school right after I got out. I quit halfway through. So had half of a bachelor's degree, had nothing to show for it. Everything I've ever tried to do, I've quit right before the finish line.
Yeah.
And so when I was out on the PCT, there were moments where I'm, especially in the Sierras, like, just monster mountains. You're anywhere from 9,000 feet to 13,000 feet, back to 8,000 feet, back to 13,000 feet, just getting wrecked. And it's like, if you're not getting eaten up in the valleys by mosquitoes the size of your hand, then you're like getting altitude sickness. Yeah. There was like no comfort. And I remember like laying in my tent and I'm just shivering. We're at the top of Forester Pass, which is like one of my favorite places now that I look back on it. And I remember being in my tent and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I didn't have a choice. Yeah. So I woke up the next morning and it's like, even if you can't do it, you still got 70 miles before you can, make that decision. And then by the time, it's like, I just needed to realize that I just needed to give myself a little bit of time, right, to change my mind. Because by the time I finished the 70 miles, I didn't want to get off the trail anymore. My whole mood was different, And another thing with just being around people who get it without even you having to have a conversation with them about you're having a hard time. I was in Washington. We were about 200 miles away from the end. Yeah. And I got this sinking feeling that I just wanted to go home. Like, oh my gosh, and you're that close. I was like, I've already done 2,400 miles. I can obviously finish. This isn't about
looking for reasons to go back to the old ways.
I was like, I don't have anything to prove to anybody. Like, I can quit right here if I want to, and I want to. So it's not because I can't, right? So I tell my trail family, hey, we're in a town resupplying, and I called my mom on a payphone and I was like, I'm just sobbing. And I was like, I want to come home. Like I've been out here for long enough. And she was like, okay,
Yeah.
come on home. I'll pay for your your train ticket to get back to San Diego. And then I remember going over to and the reason that I wanted to go home was because I had a leak in my ground pad. And we couldn't find it.
Yeah, was he?
We couldn't find
was he
it.
eating you alive?
Oh
Like,
my God,
right.
it's terrible. I'd go to sleep with it blown up. I'd wake up on the ground just shivering.
It's cold, yeah.
Yeah.
Sucks the heat out.
Yeah. And that was my breaking point, was a deflated ground pad. And so I walk over to my trail family and I'm like trying to be as happy as possible. I was like, hey guys, like I think I'm gonna get out of here, like Forrest Gump. Like I think I'll go home now.
I was like, what?
I'm pretty tired.
Yeah.
But I think they knew immediately that I was not meant to quit right there, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what's going on? I was like, oh, well, I got this leak in my ground pad and like there's nowhere around to like get it fixed. I don't even know how to like fix it. I don't have any of the supplies. I didn't even go with a medical kit. So everybody has a trail name. My trail name was Alcohol because I didn't want to take anybody's Band-Aids, but my knees were bloody from just tripping and being a complete klutz the entire time. Like I still have scars on my knees from just like tripping and falling and just eating it. And I would just go up to people and I'd be like, hey, I don't need your Band-Aids, but like, can I have some alcohol pads?
Let me just clean it a little bit.
Just clean.
I don't want to take too much from anyone. Be too much of a burden.
So bad. So that was my trail name. But anyway, told them what was going on. And one of the guys was like, come over here. Let's go over to this pond and see where this leak is. And I was like, all right. So we blew it up. We put it in the water immediately.
Look for the bubbles.
Yep. Immediately found it. And he had a repair kit and he repaired it. And I was like, I really appreciate you doing that. That's awesome. But like, I'm still probably going to go. And he was like, well, you can't leave us like this. And he had a plan in mind. He knew what was going on. He was like, you can't leave us like this. Like, we can't leave like this. We got to have one more fire, like one more camp out. Like, why don't we just hike out 3 miles? Let's get a case of beer. Have a really good night tonight. That way you don't have any bad feelings about how you ended this thing. We'll go to this campsite 3 miles out and then you can hike back and we'll keep going. And that talked me into hiking 3 miles more into this campsite. Had an amazing time. We played cards, like, we talked, we stayed up super late. And then the next morning I get up and I'm packing my gear and I was like, thank you guys so much. And he was like, you're not going back. You're already 3 miles out. Like, pack your stuff. And that was what got me through the next 250 miles. So was just somebody like seeing what was going on.
You started it now, not like
there's no way, dude.
Just another 3, like you went 3 more miles. Just finish it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely not. You fell into the trap and you're out here. So let's go. We're going north.
That's awesome. So then you finally, after everything you went through, you finally get to the end.
Yep. I get to the end. I go back to San Diego. I was dating somebody at the time.
At the end, were you like, this is it? Or were you just like, all right, that's it. I'm going to go home now.
Oh
again?
my
gosh.
Like,
just took it in and like did it hit you then?
It was
like something
unreal. I have a video of me recording myself walking up to the northern terminus. I think I had 6 more miles. And you can just see it in my face. I'm scared. I'm happy. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I still didn't have a job, you know, no prospects. I knew I was going back home to the place where like everything kind of came to a head and I ruined my life. And so I'm thinking about all of that. My mind's going like 90 miles a minute. And we got to the trailhead. I have pictures of that. I can't even explain what that felt like. It was crazy. It was quiet. It was the last year that the original monument was at the northern terminus. They were actually replacing it as I was standing on it.
Wow.
So it's a brand new, super clean thing where the one that I stood on was like just falling apart.
Weather to say the least.
Yeah. And so it's
kind of symbolic of that whole journey for you too. Like, I don't know how deep you want to go. That's like
seriously,
the old one's gone, and then it's out with the old, in with the new.
Exactly,
like
the whole thing.
Yeah,
it was crazy. So I get back down to San Diego. I'm there for maybe 3 days when I realize that nothing has changed in that city.
Yeah,
like not a thing. Everybody looks the same. They're doing the same stuff. They're inviting me out to the bars, and I just feel this like super low feeling. And a guy that I was dating had just transferred over to Norfolk. And
it's not like you were like riding a high.
And
like you wanted the world just to be different with you.
Yeah.
And then you come back and the world's still spinning as it was.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And wasn't good. And
sad reality, harsh reality.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. And I'd been dating this guy before I hiked the trail. He had gotten orders. He was over there, and he was like, just come over here, you know, like it'll be good. We'll work it out. Ended up coming here, and I started the nonprofit here.
Yeah.
So
back in Virginia, the place you always hated,
that
you never thought you wanted to go
hated
to.
And never. And I was like, well, if I'm like faced with like a drug dealer calling me up saying long time no see, or, you know, or like just getting in the car, taking my dog and driving across the country. That sounds like an adventure too, you know, and I'm not ready for the adventure to be done. So I came here. I immediately started working on a business plan. I have a really great support system of friends that have met me, you know, both in San Diego, Hawaii, you know, and other countries. And there was a small group of people that had seen my journey from start to present. Yeah. And they were like, how can we help? There was one that was a project manager. There was one that was a video sound guy who wanted to help with the website and do, you know, launch material. And it just, I mean, it was going to happen whether I wanted to or not.
You didn't have a say in the matter.
I didn't know say in it. So that's how it started. And we got tax exemption in 2018. We'd applied for it at the end of 2017 and got the paperwork in February, which is coincidentally the same month that Candace passed away. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it is what it is now. I mean, we've outfitted over 70 veterans. We've had over 150 applications.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
it's growing all in the right way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You know, it's crazy to think about too, is I've met, you know, people who went through the military. They're, you know, you can come out and like, you know, that was a cool experience. It is what it is. Or you can have the people who are like, that was horrible. I hate everything about it. But regardless, there's going to be a point where like, hey, whatever you take from it, it's led you to where you are. No matter, that goes with any experience or whatever you have, you know, right. Take the good, take the bad, whatever it is, you experienced it, but look where you are now. Right. You know,
and all the tools that you have, and like, you know, people have a college degree. That's cool. But like the friends that I know that went to college never sat at an all-girl orphanage in Japan and got to see firsthand what her community service work did, you know, in a different country. And, you know, my worldview is completely expanded beyond that of what, you know, the girls in Louisville, Kentucky, who've never left that town, are even aware of. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I would say Climb4 has, you know, even on times where like I've wanted to quit, because I'm telling you, man, you still run into people who, veterans who, you know, you got a good batch and you got a bad batch. Mm-hmm. And there are some people that just catch you on a bad day, or you catch them on a bad day. And there have been many moments where I've been in a position where I was like, I do not want to do this anymore. Like kind of like being out there on the trail, like just being super overwhelmed and not being able to see past the mood. Yeah. Right. And being like, well, my social security is attached to this. I don't have a choice. Yeah, you're stuck. Yeah. So, and the feeling always goes away. It can be stressful sometimes, but then sometimes it's completely, all encompassing, just super, super fulfilling. And for the most part, like 90% of the time it is. And it is still to this day a passion project. We don't take a single dollar for salary, for anything like that. It's all the funds that, you know, when you pay for their hat, when you donate a check, like it all goes back into outfitting veterans. So
that's awesome. That's got to get you stoked.
It's
that's
so,
great. Yeah.
So cool.
And then as far as like people that go through the program, do they, at the end, do they ever just come up and like, thank you, like that's what I needed, or you see something change, hopefully?
So we asked them to send pictures. This is a national nonprofit. So somebody from Washington can apply for it, and we send them the gear in the mail. And the cool thing about how this all comes full circle is I got introduced to American Warrior Association. This was right after I lost my job. I was a very good employee, still lost my job. You know, you can't win. And then I ended a relationship that was a long relationship. It was about 3.5 years. And it was basically simultaneous, these two events, and they were crushing. And
one's more than enough. Now let's compound it.
Yeah, let's absolutely. Yeah. It's like, you anymore? You hit like a girl. But I'm just shattered. I love it. Just shattered. But that was introduced to me right at the end of the breakup, which happened after the layoff. And the girl who messaged me on Instagram, and she was like, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I heard amazing things about you. We have a mutual friend, and he told me that you would be the perfect person to fill this spot that just became open. We're a brand new nonprofit. We held a retreat in 2019. This was in end of 2020, or actually beginning of 2021. And she said, we had a person who was in this slot and they canceled at the last minute. This is where we're going. She sends pictures. It's at this beautiful lodge in Colorado.
They sent the pictures on purpose.
Oh my gosh. Right. And I was skeptical. And I also, even though I own a nonprofit, I have never once asked for anything from another nonprofit. Like I've never applied to anything.
Yeah.
And what was going to change that is who's the mutual friend, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to say a lot about the organization, one, and two, about whether or not I trust to go, right? You're telling me I could just hop on a plane, you're paying for that ticket,
right?
And I'm going to show up in the middle of nowhere and get trafficked.
Yeah. There's a catch here.
Yeah, there's a
nice
catch
try.
somewhere, right? And I said, this all sounds amazing. Who is the person that referred you to me? And the person that referred me or her to me is a guy whose wife committed suicide. We were very good friends in San Diego. Mm-hmm. And we had this just like unspoken, we never talked about it, but they passed away very, very close to each other, and we'd already known each other, and we were kind of going through that grief together without actually talking about it. And I'm still friends with him to this day, and he knows the girl that was the business development manager at the time, and he was like, you have to tell her, it has to be her. Yeah. She's going through a hard time, she needs help, and she's not going to ask for it, so just tell her I sent her. So I was like, all right,
here you are. Yeah.
I'll go.
Yeah, you're going now.
Yeah. So I bought the plane ticket. I showed up in Colorado, and it was 28 women, which is a lot. It's a lot of women. Now our programs are capped at 12 for good reason. After that 28
yeah.
experience. And it was just a lot. It's a lot of emotion involved. And then in three, it's Monday to Friday, but Monday and Friday are travel days. So you got 3 real true days of like opening up, getting to know people. It was just too many people, but it was still, regardless of that, the most transformative thing that I had done since the PCT. And it was a different approach, right? Mm-hmm. It was like, of course you have nature as a tool, but have you considered that there is a higher power and that there is something else bigger than yourself that you can lean on in times of hardship and all of this? And I did not know that it was a faith-based retreat when I went.
Yeah.
So it was a very huge surprise when I sit down and get the brochure of like the itinerary, and it's like, we're going to talk about the Bible and, the prodigal son and all of this stuff.
You're
and
like,
I'm
what is this? How to get involved in
this?
this? Yeah.
This is like my Catholic high school all over again. And at that point, I'd considered myself atheist. And I remember saying that to somebody at the trip. I was like, I'm so glad you guys are finding peace in this, but I've got nature and I'm doing totally fine.
Yeah, they're like, don't you work for this organization?
Right.
What the heck's wrong with you?
Seriously. And a woman said something very important to me after she was like, well, what do you consider yourself? I was like, I don't really believe that there's anything else past this. I think I'm an atheist. And she said, well, I heard something that was pretty big for me. And the concept is that there's really no such thing as an atheist. Like everybody worships something. And I was like, whether it's money, whether it's, booze, whether it's,
pick your God, pick your poison. God. There's something out there.
You're going to lean on something.
Exactly.
And so that was pretty transformative. And then, some weird things happened after that program. And I would be not in the right frame of mind to assume that it was just coincidence that these things happened the way that they did. So before I went on that program, I had gotten laid off. Simultaneously, a Navy SEAL had committed suicide, and somebody had reached out to me 2 weeks before I got laid off and said, hey, do you have a t-shirt company that we can use to do fundraiser t-shirts? And I just said, let me handle it. Yeah. Let me handle it. Let me make the shirts. Let me I'll get in touch with the logo guy. You guys worry about nothing. This is routine for me. Yeah. Cruise control, really. Let me handle this. So, the memorial was just coincidentally the day after I got laid off. And I went to, it was a paddle out. And it was just unreal, seeing everybody join together and seeing I was not in a good place and seeing the hurt that everybody had felt right after I got laid off. It was okay, I need to keep myself in a right frame of mind. They talked about God. They talked about all of these things. And we ended up raising a pretty good chunk of money for this individual. And right after that, we had been planning a Climb4 retreat where we invited all of our program applicants who had received gear to come to New Hampshire to hike Mount Washington, which is a beast of an undertaking. New Hampshire, Northeast mountaineering is just totally underrated. If you've never done it, you should totally do it. It'll make a man out of you. Yeah. But all of these things started kind of piecing themselves and stitching themselves together. My older brother is a clinical psychologist. And when I was trying to make this retreat happen, this was with Climb4, not with AWA. It was before AWA. I reached out to my brother and I was like, I think I want to do a retreat and I want to meet these people. I never get to meet them. I don't get to see their faces. I want to see them in action. I want to send them through a packing training, land navigation. I want to get them prepared so they can do cool stuff, you know? Yeah.
Kind of feed off that energy.
Right.
This
and
is awesome.
see, I just wanted physical proof that these people existed and that they were using the gear, and it was helping them. And we did a trial run retreat, and my brother actually, I asked him for his advice before it happened, and he was like, are you asking me for advice or are you asking me to help? Because either way I'm in. You want me to come? Yeah. As a psychologist, and luckily we were in the middle of the pandemic, so he could do one of those emergency licensure things, he was in Kentucky. And he just...
Is that to work across state?
Yeah. So your license would work. Yep. So because we were in COVID, there were no issues. He just applied for an emergency licensure, and we were able to use him up in New Hampshire legally. And the New Hampshire lodge where we stayed, which was right at the base of the White Mountains, also where I learned to ski, is a guy who found us on Instagram who was like, hey, I'm a property investor. I have a huge 40-person lodge that is free to you for 4 days if you can figure out a way to use it, which is how we came up with the retreat concept. And we did it, and it was amazing. And I remember after it, because I was working a lot, I was like, I wish I could do more of this, but there's no way that I could do it with what I've got going on.
Yeah.
And then I got laid off.
Yeah. I see a pattern here.
So crazy. So then I attend this program. I meet so many cool women, all different walks of life, some women who've gone through some pretty horrendous stuff and then done some really cool stuff also. And I kept in touch with the director of women's programs. Her name is Laura. And she reached out to me in the summer. So that was in October of 2021. And she reached out to me in the summer of 22. The spring. And she was like, hey, would you be willing to come back as a volunteer? I was like, absolutely. I would love to do that. Like, let me help anyway. After I went to my retreat as an attendee, I started church shopping. I hadn't gone to church in 10 years at least. And my life has just completely changed since then. And so I volunteered for a summer program. And while I was there, I told Laura, I was like, I really love your mission for this. Like, this is changing a bunch of lives. And I really would suggest that if you guys have the funds for this and want to kind of help also a very niche group of people, but still a group that exists. Yeah. I know that there is a need for expeditionary programs because I've outfitted a lot of them, right? I know there are people that think that they can get outside and that just being out there can help them, but it can be really hard to enter the outdoor industry for sure. And so I just wanted to put that in your ear. And she was like, well, how about you head that up?
Huh?
Yeah. So I did. I was hired on as their expeditionary program person, and I held 2, and then I transitioned into a full-time programs manager in September. And I've been working with them ever since. So, and awesome. What's really cool, because you said, do you ever get to see, these people in action?
Sure. Yeah.
I was on the second expeditionary program, and I had remembered that some of these names sounded super familiar, and I couldn't put it together. Yeah. And 3 of the women on this group of 8 were applicants through Climb4. And I was just sitting there eating outside, looking at Half Dome, watching them use their gear.
Yeah. Wait a second.
And so it really does all come full circle. And I've got, we're planning one in the Rocky Mountains this year in August. It's already halfway filled up.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. That's how I got attached to both of them. And, it's been a cool ride.
Yeah, to say the least. It's been a ride too, for you to have all those experiences. But I think with that, you have the ability to relate and, to actually go through that and to be able to share that and see it. I think that's an awesome place to be, and it's a good spot for you.
Right. Yeah.
And as far as, people looking to either join or help out in any way they can, what's the best way for them to kind of look into that, or where to find you?
So for Climb4, I mean, we're always looking for volunteers local in the area to do fundraisers. So if you just hop on to, the website is www.climb-4.org. If you just jump on there and fill out one of the contact us surveys, or, that little bubble that you can type into, that'll come straight to me. So that's how you can get in touch with me there. Climb4 has an Instagram, super easy to find. It's climb4_. And then we are actually, if anybody's interested, we're taking applications this year as well. We just opened up in February. And then for American Warrior Association, same kind of concept. If you want to go on one of these programs, they're for men and women. They're both separate. So we have all men's programs and all women's programs. if there's any interest there, you can just go to awa-usa.org. All of the information's on there. They do scholarships as well. So if there's
awesome.
anybody who's trying to do continuing education, get their master's, there is, the potential that they could get that funded through AWA. So.
No, that's great. The AWA community, I think they also support not just the vets, but any first responders. Is that correct?
Yep. Police officers, firefighters, and trauma nurses.
Yeah. I mean, those, talk about jobs that are exposed to a lot of stuff as well here in the States,
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And especially in the climate now, for sure. Like they need
100%. Yeah. And talk about strong community and passion. It's all there. So that's awesome. Well, Leslie, thank you for your time today. To know that no matter where people kind of are on their journey, as they're going through their kind of path, so there's people like you are kind of their guiding light, no matter how dark it gets. There's people like you that shine. So
thank you.
Appreciate that and keep doing good work.
Thank you.
Civvies is proudly brought to you by producer and sponsor MetroStar, a global digital services and solutions provider. Life transitions are hard without the pressure of finding a new job. Veterans at MetroStar have built a close-knit group within the organization and are eager to help you on your new path. To explore career opportunities and life at MetroStar, visit metrostar.com/veterans. We'll link that and other career pages in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Civvies, presented by MetroStar. If you want to learn more about Civvies or MetroStar, or just want to reach out, check out the links in the description. I'll catch y'all on the next one.